If you are a voting senator and you do not get the email, please let me know. We think we got it, but you know, technology. Yeah, it was something you said, Jason. So just a quick reminder, I know we have a lot of people that haven't been here before, so thank you very much for coming. For the meetings, even if you are very good at projecting your voice, which I am, you still need to talk into the microphone because the people at home that are watching through the stream cannot hear you from their house if you talk loud in the room. So you have to talk into the microphone. So if you're in the back and you want to talk into the microphone, you just got to make your way to one of the two in the back corners there. Or if you're near one of these here, you could just hit the button and then go ahead and talk. And attendance went out. So if you could just respond to that quick. You should be able to access it from your phone or your whatever device that you brought with you. This is Mary's first meeting as a secretary, so I want to officially welcome Mary Artell as the new College Senate Secretary. She's been helping us clean up the site, and this is the Senate email attendance was the first one. So thank you, Mary.
So if I miss you, let me know.
Perfect. All right, did Allison get it? This wants to restart. No, you cannot restart. Start later. All right, so as I would like to welcome you today, June is our first meeting of the 2022-2023 academic calendar for the College Senate. We do not meet in July or August, and we will meet again in September. But today is our first meeting of the academic year 22-23. So thank you very much for joining us. We usually have questionable attendance in June, especially if the sun is shining. So we really appreciate everybody coming here because that means we're able to do the business that we need to do for the college and its academic needs. So today is June 14th. It is Flag Day. Erica and I were driving down Main Street, and I was like, what is with all these flags? And it took me a minute, and then I remembered, because I have kids, my kids are doing a Flag Day parade today that I skipped. So today is Flag Day, and which reminded me it's June 14th, which is 1 month after May 14th, which is when we had the racist shootings and murders in the city of Buffalo, was 1 month ago today. So with that, I want to take a minute to just remember the individuals that were murdered in our backyard, because it is right around the corner from our city campus. Many of our faculty and staff and our students were greatly impacted by that event. And we now have Juneteenth on Monday, the 20th off, which I was surprised it took until yesterday, given that this tragedy happened in our backyard. But if you haven't seen your email, we do have the Juneteenth holiday is being recognized by the college. So if we could just take a minute for those victims. So thank you. So it's the month of June. We are celebrating Juneteenth, which is, of course, the celebration of the emancipation of our enslaved peoples from way back in the 1800s. And we still celebrate it today and commemorate the Emancipation Proclamation. There's a lot of really great community events going on this weekend throughout the city of Buffalo and neighboring communities. I'd like to invite you to check them out. It is also Pride Month, so depending on where you live, there's also been a lot of Pride activities as well. My community had a little parade and a bike ride on Saturday that I went to with my children. And there's just a lot of great things happening in our community that we can celebrate together. We had Summer Institute, which was last week. It was great attendance, so thank you, everybody. I know it came about a week or so after finishing and completing the spring semester, and then, of course, right on the start of the summer sessions. And a lot of people are doing Bright Space pilot right now. So I know there's several people in this room that are working with Pat Ryan and our DL team to work out all the kinks of that pilot. So thank you very much for that. Pat will be talking a little bit later with a little bit greater detail about some of the things that we've been doing with the Bright Space pilot. Erica and myself are also part of the, I'm sorry. Erica's no longer, I forgot, sorry. I am part of the pilot, and so is Jason Steinitz, who's part of our executive team, and Patty Kaiser. We had graduation not that long ago. Graduation was fantastic. Highly recommend I know if you were not able to go this year, think about going for next year. It's fantastic for our students, and actually, as an educator, right? I mean, I knew several of them, but to know and see all of our students coming and walking across that stage, we see moms and dads walking with children, and some are walking with parents, and it's just a great celebration of our students and our community. And I want to thank our administration for recognizing the faculty in our role with the students. I've been attending graduation for 15 years, and it's the first graduation I've ever attended where the faculty and staff were thanked for our part in getting our students to the graduation. So thank you for that. It was very much appreciated and still very much appreciated. We have 5 new at-large senators. We announced the win in May, but they are all here today. We have our very own Bob Germoni, who's our master of electronics up there, of course, with Nick and Ryan that are our helpers as well. But Bob is joining us, Stephanie Sharmack from South, and she's Chem, Mike Higgins, South Math, Ashley Hesnowski, who is City Bio, and Amy Yoder, our Dean of Students at South Campus. So welcome aboard, thank you, and we look forward to calling on you guys to help us with all of our academic needs throughout the next year, of course, and then throughout your term. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Balkin for the President's Report.
Thank you, Colleen. Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to thank all of you for all you're doing. I know it's been a really tough several weeks, especially since May 14th. As Colleen may know, obviously in order for us to be able to grant holidays, it requires an MOU. Everything is a negotiation with the Faculty Federation, as I'm sure you're aware. So at any rate, thrilled to be able to do it. Obviously, it's critically important that we rally around our community, especially our city community, recognizing that we had over 350 or 400 students that lived in the top supermarket zip code or a contiguous zip code. So independent of whether or not they are right next to the city campus, the fact of the matter is those students attended classes at all 3 of our campuses, and consequently the impact to our college was significant, and it will remain significant. So I just appreciate your empathy and your recognition of the fact that some things like that aren't easy to get over, and I know that all of you have been impacted by it. And again, I just appreciate your empathy as you're working with students and peers. I also wanted to give you a quick update on the retirement incentive. We have about 25% of our eligible Faculty Federation members who have signed up to date. We have extended the date through this week, Friday. We'd really encourage anybody who's eligible, who has the financial means to take advantage of it, to take a full advantage of it. Frankly, our participation is less than 50% of what we anticipated. With respect to the AAECC, they're at about 38% participation, and they're going to be open probably another couple weeks, primarily because their MOU for that retirement incentive was signed 2 weeks after the FFECC MOU. There's a lot going on. Obviously, I want to also thank those of you who participated in the micro-credential training session that we had last week. I believe it was last week. That's critical to the future of our college. I think I mentioned last time I was here that Governor Hochul in mid-February highlighted the fact that she wanted Suny to be a leader in the offering of micro-credentials. They're critically important to our local workforce. Times have changed. People are not as focused on credentials as they are on competencies. And frankly, being able to provide a micro-credential so that people gain some level of success at SUNY Erie is critical to the potential of them continuing on and getting more stackable credentials. So all that to say, wildly important that we all step back, work with our advisory committees, our industry representatives, people that are in the know and understand the specific competencies that are lacking in students or traditional or non-traditional students today or employees today, and we try to figure out how best to address them. I'll tell you, I've met with 20 plus business owners, CEOs over the last few weeks, actually the last few months, and 201, they're more than anxious to work with us. Frankly, we're in a great position primarily because they recognize that there's not the talent they need in the workforce today. Not just the numbers, but even the people in their ranks don't necessarily have the competencies they need to advance through the ranks. So, moving forward, I think you're going to hear a lot more about the fact that our demographics and what we're targeting has to comprehend the fact that population growth is on the decline, or there's no population growth. It's actually a decline in population. Although we've had spots of increased population growth, it's primarily immigrant growth in Buffalo and Erie County, which is great. And I'll tell you, when we talk about Juneteenth and the opportunities forward, quite frankly, we have to wake up in Western New York and recognize that our best hope for being able to be a competitive city in the future is to invest in immigrants moving to this area. We should have one of the best multicultural centers in the country. Because, again, we're competing with every mid-sized city in the United States for inorganic growth. Organic growth is not going to happen. As Erickson likes to share with me, there's only about 18,000 juniors and seniors in high school in our service area, and we've got 21 colleges. And if you assume that of that 18,000, probably a large fraction are going to four-year colleges outside the area. It doesn't really leave a lot for us to fight over, and it requires that we step back and revisit exactly who we're targeting. Not to say we're going to abandon traditional students. I'm in favor of growing our participation in advanced studies and even teaching in high schools as necessary. But by the same token, we have to be open to the reality that the largest demographic that we can serve right now are probably 25 to 34-year-olds, because there's about 120,000 out there in the Western New York area who don't have anything more than a high school degree. So, think about that as a pool that we should be addressing. And again, those potential students, they all have lives. They're working. So we need to figure out how to accommodate their schedules. We might have to revisit the CBA terms to enable more people to teach evenings. But, at the end of the day, we have to focus on what our mission is. And frankly, I think our mission is more critical than ever. So with that, I just want to kind of open it up to questions. I know there's a lot going on. You may have questions about anything and everything. I'm going to be wildly transparent. Feel free to ask me anything.
Pam?
Yes.
Hi. First question is, we have very few evening courses to meet the needs of any student that wants to do evening courses. So I'm confused as to the last statement that you made regarding
So the
that.
point is, we need evening courses to meet the needs of students. That's
yeah,
my...
definitely.
So,
I thought they were cut.
So my understanding
fall.
is the faculty helped identify when courses should be taught. Which sessions should be taught?
No.
Thank you,
So,
Patty.
Adiyam, do you want to comment?
Okay, so part of what we did for the fall course offering is look at a historical data, but I think part of what we have to do to really talk about what Dr. Balkin is talking about is really plan our evening course offering, because what we noticed is that they were happening in pockets, but not as a college. So it is something that we have to think about, but we have to think about it systematically. So going forward, we will be having our spring schedule offering. We will look at that and systematically, as an institution, offer evening courses by program as necessary. So we did look at that, but it was not happening at the college level.
Well, moving forward, we need to look at it. I mean, frankly, we recognize the fact that high school students or people that are available, 8 to 5, are on the decline. So we have to figure out, ideally, again, what are the competencies that are going to make them valuable in the workforce today? And whether or not, we've got a course offering or we've historically offered a micro-credential, moving forward, I think the definition of micro-credentials has to be based on exactly what industry players require, not what we have on the shelf. Some people have thought that micro-credentials means, okay, rather than offering, all the classes associated with the certificate, we're only going to offer 2, or we're going to pair them together and call it a sub-micro-credential. Although that might be possible, it might be significant and relevant for some areas, my guess is it's not going to be significant for most. And I will tell you that in speaking with some industry players, they'll step up and say, look, I love machine tool, and that degree sounds great. But quite frankly, all I focus on is CNC for lathe. So for me to wait for 2 years for somebody to get a CNC, a 2-year degree in machine tool, isn't going to provide the return on investment I need. However, across the board, I would say all but maybe one company has suggested that they're more than willing to invest in their employees and pay for them to go to school. I'm talking to them about, how flexible you're going to be with their schedules. But, I've even talked to some who've said, I'll pay people $1 more per hour if they meet the dean's list. So, there's people out there that are really interested in engaging our students and helping their workforce. And again, we've got to get creative. We got to step up and identify those opportunities, because whether we like it or not, the number of non-credit opportunities is going to grow much faster than the number of for-credit opportunities. Not to say that we can't, ideally crosswalk, non-credit back to for-credit, but we just have to be cognizant of our audience. And, whether it's a writing course, so there's just a ton of opportunities. I'll tell you that amongst them is the fact that I'd say half the employers I've talked to are very interested in customer service, getting training, having people trained in emotional intelligence. Whether it's due to cell phones or, excessive networking use or whatever, the people skills that most people have now, especially those graduating from high school or just getting out of college, are poor relative to probably most of our generations. So something that's a serious issue, serious concern. And frankly, it's disturbing to me when somebody says, look, we'd love to hire this person. We think you've got the technical skills, but I'd never put them in front of a customer. And that happens more often than I'd like to share. It's kind of embarrassing. And to that point, I just really want to encourage all of you who have any kind of experience working in the industry, working in businesses, doing anything where you're interacting with people, to coach your students on the importance of emotional intelligence. I said at the commencement ceremony that EQ, emotional intelligence, is now recognized as being more important than IQ. It's absolutely critical that we get people who know how to work with each other and know what it means to really own a job, own their responsibility, and contribute to a business. So, and it's something that we can just keep plugging away at. I would love for our students to be known as the ones who get it. And, if they get it, employers will be lined up at the door encouraging their students to either go here or their employees to go here or to hire students who come from here.
Derek, you had a question?
an observation. I've always advocated using capacity figures, in other words, numbers of students in classes, spread out across the whole program. So as opposed to looking at capacity of one class or another class, take a look at the whole program. But we arbitrarily used a single capacity figure between the night seated program and the day seated program that pretty much wiped out our night seated program, went from 12 courses down to 4 in about one semester. Because when forced to cut the number of classes, we were given the option of either cut a night class with 14 students or cut a day class with 20 students. We weren't going to cut the day class.
So just so you know, any class that has 14 students, I wouldn't recommend cutting. So, to revisit this, if we're at the point, we're 2 months away from the start of the semester and we're cutting classes, what sense does that make if we got 14 people in them already?
It was a arbitrary imposition of a single capacity figure across 2 different programs. The night program is a different market than the day program. And it needs support because our students would rather be working than studying. And we were supporting up to 12 classes, at least in our experience, night-seated classes. And because those classes got added into the capacity for our day classes, the whole night program got wiped out in about 2 semesters. Where I think we're running maybe 2 now. We used to run 12. And most of these students, these non-traditional students who are coming back, the older students, the 25 to 30, they've never done distance learning. That came after they've left. And so their entree to going back to college again is going to be night classes, seated classes. And even if we don't do a full program, if we have a few of these classes and they start filling up, we'll know, okay, the economy has switched, students are going back to night classes again. But if we don't offer any, we won't, by the time we realize what's going on, it'll be too late.
Thank you. Patty?
A couple of comments. One, the assumption that the faculty made those decisions, I think Derek has articulated the position we were in. We may have made decisions, but we were given a poor list of choices. We have different administrators, and for that we're grateful. I'm pleased to hear what Adiam has said. I'm pleased to hear your commitment. I did workforce development before I came to Erie, so I've heard those conversations. I've had those conversations with the employers in Western New York at that time. They didn't use the same jargon you're saying, but they wanted people who knew how to learn. They wanted people who knew how to have critical thinking skills, to work in teams. Those are things that Erica teaches in her English class, that I teach in my history class, that Derek teaches in his sociology class. They are part of an undergraduate liberal arts education. That is part of my concern about micro-credentialing. At the same time, micro-credentialing could be the way into workforce development. That was part of what we did 20 years ago when I was writing grants for ECC, to bring people together to figure it out. But if we're going to develop new programs, we need to have administrative commitment that they will actually happen. If I'm an adult learner, I want to know that I can take my program, whether it be a micro-credential stack of courses, whether it be a 1-year certificate, a 2-year certificate, a 2-year degree, access onto my 4-year degree, whatever my path might be, I need to know that I can do it at night school. I started at UB as a night school student, as a mom. It was the only way I could go to UB, and it worked for me because I could go 2 nights a week, stack my courses, and take a program. That hasn't been possible for a long time at Erie. And it's important that we do that again. And I also would suggest that the faculty certainly knew that our market was not high school graduates. I didn't get many of them at City Campus. Most of my students were grown-ups. Most of them were working harder than anybody else. They're the toughest working people you're ever going to meet. Erie students statewide work more hours outside of the classroom than any other community college in the state. This is not something to be proud of, but it is a reality of the poverty level of many of our students, whether they be rural poor, I live out in Springville, or urban poor. Our students need packages that they can count on. So I hope that we can stand behind these statements. I hope that we can make it happen. I'm concerned with our strategic realignment study, which is on the board behind you, that many of us are fearing like, okay, this is a good game plan, but I don't know how we're actually going to implement it. So you have a challenge in front of you.
I'm well
Thank you,
aware of
Patty.
the challenge. And having been here 4 months now, I'm sure you're all painfully aware of the challenge. I wish things were different. I wish we didn't face a $9 million deficit. I wish things were better managed. But at the end of the day, we are where we are. And, all we can do is figure out how best to move forward. I would love to be all things to all people. I'd love to have sections available 24/7, but it's unaffordable. People think that a community college should be readily accessible. I'd love for that to happen. It's not financially viable. And, unfortunately, for the last 10 years, 5 years, I don't know how many years, that really hasn't been comprehended. No one has really been following the financials to say, is this even making financial sense? And that's part of the reason why our cash reserves have gone down, why we've effectively, wasted all of our HERF dollars on just keeping our nose above water. It's disappointing. I understand where you are, but unfortunately, we can't have it both ways. We're in a tough spot. And, to just say, look, we should be able to do this and we should be able to do that. I would love to do that. But I've got to be able to figure out a financial way of making it viable. So, all the more you can do to help us would be great. Part of the reason I'm talking about micro-credentials is because it provides us flexibility and possibly an opportunity for our faculty to generate revenue teaching a 1-weekend course, a 2-week course, a 4-week course. And again, ideally engaging industry sectors and piquing their interest in collaborating with Suny Erie moving forward. This is not an environment that's going to get easier. Make no mistake. Number of traditional students is going to continue to go down. And to your point, this idea of the importance of night school, wildly important. Right now, I don't know if you're aware, but the CBA does have restrictions on the number of courses that can be taught after 3 o'clock. There's terms that are gating our success needlessly. And, frankly, I'd invite all of you to step through your CBA because I identified 13 terms in my first month here that I think are needlessly precluding us from being successful. We can argue about them, we can do impact negotiation, impact bargaining, whatever, but at the end of the day, if we're not able to serve the students, we're not completing our mission. So, again, more than happy to talk to anybody and everybody about suggestions and opportunities, but when you come to the table and we're talking about micro-credentials, what I really want is a micro-credential that's defined in conjunction with somebody in industry who says, yes, verily, I have demand for that, and my industry sector has demand for it. Because that's what's going to be differentiating. Moving forward, us offering Me Too classes is important, especially recognizing a lot of our students transfer to Buff State and other four-year schools. However, what's really going to catch people's attention is our ability to collaborate closely with industry partners who understand and value what we're doing. Because they're the ones who are going to be hiring, they're the ones who are going to be raising the flag and talking about us more publicly. When people transfer from Suny Erie to Buff State, they don't talk about Suny Erie anymore. They talk about Buff State, or they talk about UB. That's their four-year school. That's what they consider themselves alums from. We have to change that mindset. And frankly, we have the opportunity to do it. We have some amazing alumni who've done phenomenal things, and we're going to continue to generate amazing alumni. But we got to be able to figure out how to identify those stories by program and bring them to the table. And, recognize also, marketing has always been blamed for a lot of things. I'll tell you, when I was at IBM, I ran a business line, and I didn't have the wherewithal to be able to do the sales myself. So I hired what's called a manufacturing rep, basically a company that serves as a sales arm for you. Do you think I ever depended on a manufacturing rep that had 80 other companies, 80 other products in their portfolio? Never. You know, if they weren't focused on what I was doing, I took responsibility for it myself. And unfortunately, when we've got 80 programs, we each have to step into the 21st century and figure out how best to engage the population that is going to be most prone to take our program. And I'm not saying you have to be master artists, but you know, we do have to take responsibility and ownership for trying to figure out how to grow our programs. Because even if you say, well, we've got 5 recruiters for 80 programs, they're going to sell what they know. That's the way of the world. I mean, this is the way it's been in industry. It's the same in academia. You know, each of us as program chairs, department chairs, assistant chairs, whatever, we got to figure out how we're going to grow our programs. Because ultimately, our livelihoods depend on our success in growing our programs. I mean, I would never want to be dependent on somebody else to say, what happened? You know, you didn't deliver. So again, I understand your situation. I understand and commiserate with the situation we're in collectively as a college. But you know, across the board, we've got to get creative. And I know we have the skill set. You know, I know we have phenomenal faculty. The stories I hear every day are amazing. It's just how do we turn them into a marketing tool for us more efficiently, more effectively, and much faster? You know, I'll tell you, you know, we're in a fight. And, you know, if you're not resilient and you're not agile, you're going to lose. And, you know, that's my biggest concern. You know, when I was in Indiana, I was able to do things much faster. I can't do things at the same pace here. And that's a real problem. And it's something that we all need to recognize is time is not our friend. Time is our enemy. And the longer it takes for us to figure out how to get our ducks in a row and how best to deliver solutions that are going to be compelling to local industry partners, the worse off we're going to be. So, again, we can do this. It's just a matter of saying, I own this, and I'm going to figure out how to get it done.
Thank you. So I don't know if you noticed, but we have RPK later in the agenda, so I just popped it up now as long as we're talking about discussions and everything. Maybe we'll just continue the questions and knock them all out at once, if that works for you. Would you rather stay up here or in your chair? I don't know who has water. Does anyone have? Oh, way to go, Bob. I also want to just point out that Paul Daniel is here, who was charged with looking around South Campus to help with adjustments there as well. That is available for questions regarding those items also. Thank you, Bob. Michael Higgins, you're up next.
If the RPK study is up, if I could ask a question about that. I mean, you were sort of talking about it. What is the specific data rationale for deactivating programs with fewer than 30 students and monitoring for deactivation of programs fewer than 60? You know, is there financial evidence that we're losing revenue? And continuing, liberal arts and sciences, to my studies, you know, has made us the most money since the inception of this college. And most of those, like math, science, they transfer. You know, you said it's like a loss for us if they transfer to a.
I didn't say it was a loss for us.
But
that's part of our mission. Mission, you know, transfer to 4-year, that's a win.
Yeah.
You know, we're improving the workforce readiness and the educational level. That's a win. Yeah. But I'm just saying, from their perspective as who they're alumni of. You know, very rarely do people who graduate from 4-year schools say, hey, I'm going to contribute dollars to my 2-year school. That was my only point.
Okay. But I mean, math and natural science, if I'm not mistaken, is on that list. I mean, most of our students are transfer students, so why deactivate us?
So again, the number 30 is not cast in stone, and it's not a number we're adhering to or tracking to. So to be clear, that's not anything that we're going to use as a basis for canceling programs. What they wanted to do was basically highlight the required return on investment for most courses in order for you to be able to be financially viable. And for a robust class to have 30 people in it, for example, when the contract, you know, for a lecture allows 34, is not an unreasonable number to say, let's put a stake in the ground. But again, that's not a hard and fast rule by any means. And the number of programs that we're looking to deactivate, is nowhere near the number of programs that have 30 or fewer people in it.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was financial data to show that these programs were losing money for us or not, or is this,
So
what's the rationale behind these deactivations? Where's the data that shows they should be deactivated? They're losing this amount of money per year. 4 students, that's a win to me if we're making money.
Yeah,
that's a
without a
win
doubt.
if we're making money.
And to your point, as an example, this summer we had South Campus and North or City Campus both offering an identical course online. One had 5 students in it, the other had like 15. So should we hold both of them? It's an online course, 100% online.
If they're
We're
making
one
money for
college.
us, yes.
No, they're not. Because
That's what I
any
wanted
class
to know,
that's
is there data?
But think about it. Why would we hold a course, the identical course, both online, and have 2 sections of it when it's combined, they fall below what an online course would require? I mean, that mentality of saying, how do we do this more efficiently is what we have to really focus on. And the whole point of the RPK study was to highlight the fact that efficiency is critical for our future survivability.
Thank
So-
you.
so-
Allison?
Good question.
Hi. My question is, what will spring 2023 look like at South? According to the RPK study, they recommend that all
So again,
campuses should be sitting
we're
on
not
north.
needing to necessarily follow the RPK study to the letter, right? So right now, we recognize that we have deactivated 16 courses, 16 programs, which basically means those 16 programs are also available at either North or City. So again, it's not like we're basically said you can't take these courses at ECC anymore. All we're saying is that they're hubbed at a different location. And by the way, we're required by the Department of Education and our accrediting agency to teach out anybody who started a program. So, nothing is going to change in probably the spring semester all too significantly.
So those 5 programs that are staying for fall will be continued to be offered at South Campus in the spring?
No, I said the programs that have not been deactivated may stay longer, but programs that are deactivated, ultimately, whether they're online courses or they're going to be offered, from North or City, that's to be determined. But programs that have not been deactivated that are there are still there. I will tell you that the footprint of South is way too large for what we need. And frankly, it's not the greatest building in the world. I mean, I don't know if it's my age, but I still need to drag a pen along the wall to find my way back whenever I go in and out. I'm joking, kind of. But all that to say, we've got probably, when was the last time you were at South Campus?
That's actually my campus that I work
So-
with.
Yeah, this morning.
But just so you know, every time I go, if I see three students, it's a lot. I rarely see students there. So one of the things that we're looking at is how many of those South Campus students are actually coming to class versus doing online classes, or face-to-face versus online. So we're trying to look at the data in every which way. In fact, the Faculty Federation apparently polled 800 and some students, and I asked them for break it into by campus. Show us what the detail is by campus, as students define their home location. Still haven't received it. I'm sure they're working on it. But to your point, what South will look like, what North will look like, what City will look like, I can't tell you. Because part of the challenge we have is we've got to figure out how to morph with the demand. And it's not just the location, it's how we provide those services. You're all well aware of our collaboration with West Her and Northtown, and the fact that people are being instructed at their facilities for 7.5 weeks on, 7.5 weeks off type of thing. All that to say, the more we can do to leverage community assets, the better off we are, because we'll be integrated with the community, and ideally we'll be able to do things a lot more cost effectively, and hopefully closer to where the students are.
Amber?
Well, first off, I'd like to welcome you to one of my classes at South Campus because they're pretty full most of the time.
So I'd love to come.
Anytime, we're welcome to have you there. So I'd really like to call attention to the RPK study, and I can only speak to it from my own area of expertise. I am not data-driven like many of the people in the room are. I come from the field of communication and specifically public relations, and my background is in research and strategic planning. So I have done this professionally numerous times, and I decided last night that I was going to grade this study. I gave it a D, because it's missing so much information. And any of you who do work in data, you know that the hard numbers are only a very, very small part of the story. What's missing here is the context. What's missing is the implementation of those numbers. And the fact that the actual data that we're seeing is flat out wrong in a lot of places, which I'm more than happy to go through the errors that I found just within my own department. My department is mentioned in here twice, and it's wrong both times. And then additionally, the data that is in here and the link that it has to the actual recommendations is tenuous at best. So some of the missing data that honestly I would require from any one of my students working on a campaign like this would be things like, why is there absolutely no acknowledgement to any of the money spent anywhere else besides on faculty and staff? Why is there absolutely no acknowledgement to the fact that if we close or downsize South Campus, we are creating an educational desert? The next closest community college is JCC, which is 50 miles away. Why is there absolutely no reference to community? I mean, I know we changed our name to Suny Erie, but we are still a community college. And the only reference to community I've seen in here at all is the part about the labor alignments. There's absolutely no map of where the students are located. There's absolutely no reference to how the impact is going to be felt for our lower or middle income students, no reference to what's going to happen with our immigrant students, to our Native American students. There's literally nothing in here, to be honest with you, that's worth note. It's a lot of words that don't actually say anything. And then to look specifically at the data itself, if we look at specifically page 52, that is the breakdown of the number of faculty members within different departments. And it has, for my program, Communication Arts, in the year 2021, is having 5 full-time faculty members. We have never in the life of our department had 5 full-time faculty members. We have 3.5 because we split one person with IT. So I went to IT and thought, well, maybe there was some confusion there. IT is listed as having 7 full-time faculty members. They only have 3. So now there are 5 full-time faculty members listed just between those 2 departments that don't actually exist. So then I thought, okay, maybe I'm reading it wrong. Maybe it's the FTE, and maybe it's just that I need to go through and look at credits. So I did that. I pulled all of our schedules. I pulled my entire department's teaching load forms and went student by student, line by line, and found out, nope, we only have 4 faculty, and we need 3.8 to be able to fulfill our courses. That would also show, with those correct numbers, that the SCH that's listed here is 439 for my program. It should actually be 489. So my problem with this is, not only is it an extreme lack of data, the data that's here doesn't seem to be accurate. So to me, that calls into question the legitimacy of the entire thing. And right now, we are basing so many of our decisions off of this when it's not just affecting the people in this room. Because I'll say for myself, if I lose my job, yeah, I'll cry on my couch for a couple of weeks, but then I'll get up and I'll get another job. That's not my concern. My concern is the hundreds of students that we're basically telling the bottom line is more important than you. I don't know that I have a question in that so much as I don't understand how we can put so much weight into something that is missing
again,
so much.
You know, I think I think you may be misinterpreting the amount of weight we're putting into this. Because quite frankly, you know, at the end of the day...
I don't know that I am, because so far every email that's been sent out has been in alignment with what's up here. So if we could flat out say, yeah, that this is just a guide, that'd be wonderful. But exactly like Patty said, are we actually going to follow through with that? Because so far we haven't.
So along those lines, though, you know, if we just kind of step back and look at a $9 million deficit, you know, I agree with you. I'd love to be able to teach 100 students, 1,000 students, 10,000 students at South Campus. They're not there. South Campus isn't growing. It's got the lowest demographics and the lowest enrollment of all the campuses. How are we going to come up with the money? I mean, if you have suggestions for how we can solve this, as far as I can tell, you know, the administration is the only one going to the high schools, seeing if we can have faculty teach in the high schools. I'm the only one who went to DeUville College or other local four-year schools to see if there's courses that we could teach for them. They could subcontract us. I'm open to suggestions for how to make this financially viable. Wide
Jen?
open.
Thank you. Jen?
Thanks, Colleen. I just wanted to piggyback off the last comment that I read through the whole report last night and also saw incorrect data. And I understand that you're saying everything is not weighted on it, but when it lists 13 full-time English faculty members at City and there are 5, and 9 full-time English faculty members at South where there are 6, and 11 at North, and the numbers are vastly wrong, possibly lumping in English as an additional language, which is an entirely separate department. It causes concern when you read the recommendation to move the program to a different campus. And so I want to know that we will have a voice in saying what should happen with these departments when the data is not correct.
Well, so I agree with you, and I want you to have a voice. And, you know, our whole thrust here, at the end of the day, is we're one college. We're not 3 campuses, you know, that all have separate infrastructure and, you know, organizational structures. I mean, it makes no sense. And one of the things that we're doing, part of the reason why we're consolidating or rehubbing or, you know, deactivating in one location is primarily to recognize the fact that we got to figure out how to cut costs. You know, at the end of the day, if you've got better suggestions, you know, you've all been here probably years longer than I have. You know, I'm open to it. You know, I've come to every one of these faculty senate meetings, have kept everyone apprised of what I'm thinking we have to do in order to survive. And make no mistake, you know, we're at a point where our future is tenuous. And by the way, with us only having a fraction, 25% faculty federation and 38% AAECC participating in the retirement, that's going to cost. You know, we're going to have to figure out how to recover more resources off the books. And I'll tell you, as I told you previously, I'm terrifically worried about the fact that if we just step back and say, okay, all the adjuncts are gone, that financial model doesn't close for a community college.
Michael?
It just doesn't close.
Dr. Balkin, who do we send the errors to in the report? Because I'll piggyback with what's going on. The math full-time faculty numbers are wrong too at each campus. Who could we submit the errors to? And in terms of your comment at South Campus, I'm at South Campus, and building 3, you know, 10 to 2 is always filled. I mean, when you said, it kind of hurt me when you said you only see 3 students there. Right now, all summer 1 was canceled at South Campus because we didn't allow anything to run under 8. And, you know, I'm still waiting to hear if, you know, 6 would have made us money revenue, so I don't know why we didn't run something with 6 or 7. Still didn't make sense to me. And let's talk about correlation versus causation at South. We closed the cafeteria, so people are leaving campus to go get a good meal.
So
There's no more bookstores, so people can't get their supplies there. So, I mean, correlation, causation, whatever you want to call it, people aren't at South Campus because it's being intentionally, slowly shut down.
So let me explain how that works. You know, you're talking about causation. So you're aware, again, I've only been here 4 months, but, you know, we have a third party that manages those services. And we didn't go and tell them, hey, close. They came to us and said, this isn't financially viable anymore for us. Same thing with daycare. 2 weeks ago, they came to me and said, I got news for you. We don't have enough students or faculty that are leveraging these services, and we're losing our shirts, and we can't do it anymore. So, you know, you gotta recognize it's not us driving this. It's a business decision based on the third party that we have providing these services to us. And by the way, they can provide them a lot more efficiently than we can. So we probably would have come to that decision much sooner, or probably would have lost a lot more money. And by the way, they've tucked a lot of losses for us over the years. So I understand your concern, but, you know, the fact of the matter is, it's demand that's driving the closing, or the lack of demand that's driving the closing of these services.
I don't want to sound personal. Can you speak more to the daycare closing? My son went through daycare there. My daughter went through daycare there. The teachers were crying. They had no idea that they were getting laid off that last day. They had no idea they were closing. So
again,
who is
separate
saying that they wanted to close? My kids grew up at South Campus going through that program. They did not want to close.
Wait a minute. When you say they, I'm not talking the students or the parents.
The teachers.
Or
The teachers.
I'm
Okay.
talking about the people who manage that business. ACP, is that what they're called?
ASC.
Oh, ASC? Thank you. Talk to them.
Okay.
They're the ones who are driving these decisions. And to be candid, I would love to maintain those services. You know, fantastic services. But if they're not affordable, and a third party who's designed to do this can't afford it, I know we can't do it. So again, I'm not going to argue with you. You know, as somebody who's a recipient of services, everyone who's a recipient loves getting services. It's whether or not they can be sustained.
Other questions? Jackie.
Just to go back to what Michael said, where can we send our errors for the data in the RPK report?
You send it to the provost's office. You're welcome.
I was also a member of the steering committee, and they have their information all over this, and they also said that you could directly contact them.
Yeah, there's a woman named Katie Hagan who was spearheading this. And I'll share with you, you know, and Colleen might recall, from the first steering committee session, I made a point of saying, look, if anybody has a problem with the data sources, anything, raise your hand now. Said it in the second meeting. Dead silence. So, you know, I appreciate the fact that data's wrong. You know, I can't argue with you, you know. But I can also tell you the data was accessible and shared with the steering committee members. Am I misrepresenting anything there?
No, but there was only one faculty member. It was me that was on the steering committee.
The Faculty Federation was
and
represented.
Faculty Fed, and I did ask questions.
Yes.
Ray.
Dr. Balkin, since you became president, I've heard you speak quite a bit about workforce development. I've heard you speak quite a lot about the needs of the business community, micro-credentialing, and so forth. But I haven't heard you speak to the future for liberal arts at the college. And one of the things that the RPK study shows is that an awful lot of our students are either in general studies or social science or one of our liberal arts programs. And I'm not clear how you see liberal arts at ECC going forward.
So, great question. And I'll tell you, the thing that really scares me is the percentage of our students that are taking general studies. Because I'm sure most of you saw an article that was in the paper last week that the Biden administration is stepping back to assess whether or not there's gainful employment for people who take general studies. And what they're going to start doing is saying, look, if someone who graduates with a degree, whether it's an associate's or a bachelor's in general studies, doesn't have a salary on par with a high school graduate at age 25, those programs are not viable and they should be closed. So, you know, general studies is interesting. I'll tell you, I fully appreciate the fact that it's carrying us, but it's also a huge concern for me. Because frankly, general studies in Indiana and every other place, we used to kill ourselves to get people out of general studies because it was a nowhere landing pad. You know, they'd go there, they'd go for 2 years, and their likelihood of completing in a 4-year program wasn't great. So again, I'm hoping it's significantly different here, but we've got some things that we have to worry about to ensure that we're going to be successful continuing to push general studies. My wife's got a PhD in English. I corrected her dissertation. I love liberal arts. I love liberal studies. You know, from my perspective, everyone should have that rounded of an experience. But the reality is, unfortunately, today, we're in an environment where competency is more important than anything else. And when I say competency, it might be competency in being able to read, write, you know, send emails or whatever. But what's really a focus is emotional intelligence, attitude, you know, whether or not somebody is willing to learn on the job. Because as I mentioned at commencement, you know, the reason I'm standing here isn't because I was at one time an expert in high temperature oxide superconductors. It's because I kept learning after I graduated. And, you know, one of the things that we have to focus on, independent of whether it's a micro-credential, certificate, 2-year degree, whatever it might be. We have to figure out how to ensure that anybody that goes through our program is going to thrive when they get done. That should be our focus, independent of whether it's liberal arts or, a CNC micro-credential.
Bill?
So for me, and listening to you, a lot of these things are great, but I think at least especially as a younger faculty member here, who was lucky enough to branch off in a program, I'm going to ask the same question I asked 2 months ago: how? Because we're still stuck with all of these things are great. It's not that we don't want to, but at least on my end, and from a lot of the individuals that I get to speak with and work with on a daily basis, how? Because we get to those things. I even took a summer job in the field that I teach to be able to expand those partnerships, to expand those connections. But I don't know how to utilize that at the college. Because if I get above my department head, it's a wall. I don't get answers. I don't get summer courses that's run to the max. Every semester it's run since the beginning. How? I just need a mechanism. Like, for instance, the guidance on grants that just came out. Great, I can follow that. For a lot of the things, when it comes to partnerships and to creating these things, because everything has to go up through administration, which is exactly what you talked about, how it takes a while to get through things, it's how. And unfortunately in mine, I'm also in a weird spot that a lot of the people in my area right now don't want to wait. Just because with cannabis and everything, with the licensors that are coming out, that's a whole, they're playing their political ball game too with the state. But I just find myself over the last 4 years, especially the last year, with the question of everything I try to do is how.
So, so Bill, we met yesterday. As you know, there has to be a process. Now, one of the things that we find ourselves as a college is that, and a lot of you have said this to me many times within the 4 years that I've been here, is that we're doing multiple things. All of us are there, but not knowing that we're actually present at the particular site or organization. So part of the how is the conversation that we had yesterday, is that there has to be a chain of command. We have to know what we're doing. And if in fact, if we get into a situation, whether it's a chair or department head or a dean or a provost for that matter, there's obstacle, there's a chain of command we have to follow. So while it's great, we want to be out in the community, we want to support our students, we want to grow our program, but there's also have to be a process in order for us to be efficient. Part of the reason why also that we are in the predicament that we are is that because we did not have a process and procedure that we follow. So that has to be implemented. So I think the how is the conversation that we had very intensively yesterday about how we want to go through the process. Bill, we could talk offline, because I don't want this to be about going back and forth about that particular situation. So we'll talk tomorrow.
But to Adiam's point, she's right about the fact that we just have to have processes. For whatever reason, there aren't a lot of good, well-documented processes that everyone can say, okay, I know how to do this.
And the first thing I said to you was it was great to hear that there was something that came out about grants. Because that's something I can read, that's something that I can follow, because there's not training in these things. The micro-credential stuff, I'm one of those people that has one of the 4 micro-credentials that have been approved. I'm still trying to get through it. The person in charge of it has never answered my questions, and I'm still trying to get through that process. So yes, I understand what you're saying, and yes, I've spent a lot of time coming up to you guys asking questions. That's because I'm hitting that wall. I spent 3 months trying to use that chain of command, and I agree that the chain of command is what needs to be done so everybody's in line. What I'm saying is, at least in my portion, it does not work that way. I mean...
So, look, I understand. And, again, I'm not familiar enough with all the processes that are out there, but I can tell you there aren't enough that people know about and can access and understand or have been vetted fully to say, yep, it's being refined over time. Part of the reason most people document processes is to put a stake in the ground, and then you continuously refine it until you're world class. We have that opportunity. But I'll tell you, it takes work, and you got to be committed to documenting the process and following the process. You know, more often than not, in industry, you'll find if somebody follows a process, even if something goes south, you know, I had a customer, Cisco Networks. I had a physical design engineer follow the process for designing the chip for him, and the process was wrong. We ended up losing millions of dollars, you know, because the Cisco product came out wrong. But you know what? All we could do is say, okay, we're going to do better next time. We're going to refine the process. We're going to make sure that, you know, in the future, everybody understands that this should be interpreted this way, so there's no ambiguity. I mean, that's what we have to do, and it's a bit slow. It can be arduous, but you know, what's the ideal is we all have the opportunity to identify for the things that are most important to us the best practice, and then share them, and you know, ideally brainstorm on how we can continuously improve them.
Thank you.
You know.
Pam?
To build on the general studies comment, as an advisor in health and phys ed department, I often encourage students to switch their major to general studies if they're not sure what they want to do and they want to take some classes in marketing or some other field that's not related to us, but financial aid won't pay for you to take that course because it's not in our curriculum. So I said, switch to general studies, and you can take classes in both our departments and figure out what you want to do if their interests are so out there. We used to have the logo start here, go everywhere, anywhere, and the purpose is to figure out what you want to do. My kid just graduated from Buffalo State after coming here, still has no idea what she wants to do. So putting a number or how much money you're going to make on it really is not, I don't think, a good guideline.
That wasn't the point of it, you know. I mean, I'm just telling you what the guidelines are that the Biden administration is going to implement to assess whether or not a program should receive financial aid.
Okay.
You know, and frankly, you know, if somebody, you know, again, goes through a program, invests or spends their financial aid on something, and, you know, 2, 3, 4 years after they graduate, they're still not making as much as a high school grad, you know, there's something wrong. You know, I mean, all of a sudden, the value of the education isn't there. And it begs the question, maybe they're not being trained in the right areas, or maybe they're not getting the breadth of training they need, or maybe they just don't know how to interview. Maybe they need to be trained on how to interview. I don't know.
Okay, and putting the emphasis on graduation rates, a lot of our students, if they failed a class and now they just need one more class to graduate, we encourage them to transfer and have that course transferred back, so they technically never graduated from ECC, because like you said, when they transfer somewhere else, now they identify with that new college, so they don't go through the paperwork to transfer that one credit back.
But that point of the transfer of one credit back, I mean, just so you're aware, you know, we do provide reverse degrees. And there's no reason not to basically encourage somebody to say, look, there's no guarantees you're going to be able to complete your 4-year degree in the next 2 years.
Right.
You know, if you get X number of credit hours and get a reverse degree, we should be giving it to them. It helps their resume. It helps their saleability.
But
and
they
I
have
agree
to
with you.
initiate the paperwork to do that. Like
But do you think a lot of our students really know even about reverse degrees?
Mine do. I don't know.
I think you're probably the exception.
Thank you. Amber?
And I might be wrong.
Just to follow up on the general studies question as well, I think one of the things that also happens with general studies is that it's an easier path for a lot of students, and I do not mean that academically, I mean that in terms of scheduling. I can say personally, we've lost 3 students from my department, which is a highly hireable degree, to general studies in the last month because of the cuts in the courses. So again, that's why I think it's so incredibly important that we really truly look at the context of why students are doing some things that they're doing.
Thank you. Marianne?
Hi, first I want to thank you for your leadership, however that turns out. But I have a question. There's been a continual conversation.
You might have to just bend it down.
Okay. First, thank you for your leadership. I have a question. We're going around in circles, but the bottom line is for several months, there has been a conversation and tone suggesting that those of us that are eligible should retire if possible. Given that many of us may be in that position who personally don't want to retire, what do you want us to do for this institution, and how are we valued or devalued? Because it's overwhelming.
So,
I mean, you get this point in your career, and I understand the budget, and I understand that. But if you look at where we're at, I'm not like Amber, where I'm ready to go work somewhere else for 30 years. What is it for us, and what does that look like from your vision?
So from my vision, and as somebody who's changed careers twice after hitting age 60, I have a different perspective, and I know the skill set that's in this room. And I know that this skill set, if they were so inclined, could easily get a job. Unemployment is at record lows. And I'll tell you, what I'm most concerned about is whether or not we're going to have the legs if we get rid of everyone who's an adjunct, for example. We send a message that, hey, we can't be counted on as a potential career opportunity for people starting in the teaching credential area, or in the teaching area. That's going to be a problem. I fully understand, the situation. When somebody has a calling, they want to deliver on that calling. I fully appreciate that. But at the same time, I also recognize that, our community, Western New York, needs constantly to be bringing in new ideas, new faculty, new people. And if we don't do it, we're not going to be competitive. That's the fact of the matter. And it's not just because of the age of people. It's the idea that younger people who are closer to having completed their master's or their PhD are more engaged, typically trying to figure out how to leverage, the applied learning that they've wanting to teach.
Well, many of us here have stayed abreast of what's changing in the academic world and are functional and bring that to this institution. So
And
again,
I'm
it's
not
like
gonna
we're
argue with you.
devalued. And
To
that
say you're
is
devalued
tough.
is not accurate. The value that you bring is significant, but you also have to recognize we're in a tough situation. And I'd love for you to tell me how you'd respond in my position. I value every faculty member we have, but at the end of the day, we have too many. We have too many staff members. And, so what are we going to do? We're going to hold on to people who ultimately are going to retire in 1 year, 2 years? I also think that given the opportunity, and I'm aware not everyone is financially able to retire. I'm not holding anything against anybody. But given the opportunity, this is as good of an opportunity to exit as we're going to have, at least during my tenure. And, that's the only point I want to make. I think there's probably been way too much emphasis, candidly, on how important it is to the college. But what's equally important is that the faculty recognize that this is a good opportunity for them also. Whether you want to do another career or you want to teach part-time at DeUval, that's dying for instructors, you have options, and I just would hate for anybody who's taught here for 20, 15, 25 years, 30 years, to think that they don't have a skill set that's saleable, because each and every one of you could do wildly well in industry or in business, especially in the current environment. There's just a ton of opportunities, and people are really interested in engaging with people who have your skill sets. By that I mean people who really know how to ask the right questions, who basically dig in deep to understand how to accomplish something. Not just the surface level of understanding, but they take ownership. That's the kind of stuff that is differentiating for all of you as faculty members, and it's going to be differentiating for our alumni and for you should you decide to go outside and go elsewhere.
Thank you for your response.
Look,
Ashley?
Hi, Mr. President. I have a question. I'm a faculty member, so I'm looking at distance learning. Maybe Patrick can help us. On-campus, physical campus enrollment, and distance learning enrollment. The credit hours and offerings look like they're going up for distance learning and going down for physical campus. Our aim seems like we want to attract people to the campus so we can keep people employed. And I was wondering if maybe you or Mr. Brian can help us out with that.
So, maybe Eric, I don't know if you've got data that you can refer to, but to your point, I think one of the great differentiators that we need to leverage is the fact that we're a community college. We're in the community. And, frankly, for us to just grow our online presence, which has to compete literally with 20 other colleges in the area and 1,000 throughout the United States, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'd prefer not to grow distance learning. I think the value that we bring is that face-to-face interaction. And, when I talk about enhancing the skills of our students, their emotional intelligence, they're not getting it, through an online class. It's got to be one-on-one interaction. So I'm a huge advocate of face-to-face classes. But Eric, do you have data?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit. There's two ways, I think, of answering that question. When you look at the number of students who have identified that they are an online student, so we'll call that a distance learning student, that is, if we consider that as like a location, it would have the smallest number of students. But when you look at the course level activity, in terms of then what students are registering for, I believe for the spring 22 semester, it was the first time in the institution's history where there was the most number of classes taken, aside from the COVID years, that were then online through that distance learning modality. So I think when you look at trends in terms of students, in terms of how they are identifying themselves here as part of the ECC community, you are still seeing consistent trends similar to what we had in the past, with North having the highest number of students identified at that campus, then City and South between those two, and then identified as online as being our smallest percentage of students at this time.
Thank you, Eric. Pam?
That being said, though, I'm trying to get a student into an English class during the day, a seated class, and it's already full, and it was recommended they go take an online class. They need to be in a seated class. And also the EN 052 classes, there's none offered in the evening session for any student, so our immigrants and all that might need that besides our city's campus students. Most of my city campus students need EN 052, and trying to get that after 1 o'clock in the afternoon is very difficult, and they're working earlier. So that, I feel like we need to add more classes now before we lose them, because they've already failed the past few semesters being online, and they know now they need to be in a seated class.
And we have a process, right? So for those departments who see the need, we're looking at the data. Based upon the data, we're adding those sections, right? But we equally have to speak about the courses that are also way below. So we got to balance that. So it's all about a process. I know it takes some time a little bit, but we are being responsive as much as possible by meeting with the departments and accordingly adding those sections. Again, we don't want to get in a situation where we have a ton of classes that we have to cancel, which will inconvenience our students, our faculty, the entire college. So we have to be systematic about this. As Dr. Balkin said, this is a very challenging time. This is the first time that I could recall, and what people have said, for us to look at course offering and be systematic about it at the institution level. So we will work on this together.
Thank you.
Hi, could you please explain what the process is? And I know I'm talking out of point, but I think a lot of us have no idea what this process is. We haven't been approached. We want to know how we can add classes that were taken from us because we need those. I'm from the EAL department. Thank you.
I know. We met. I got to be honest. I have been meeting with every department. The process was written. I also been meeting and being very clear about the steps. So I gotta say, we gotta do this different. I need people, Maria, you and I met like twice or 3 times and went through the process, and I gave you information. So again, I can't tell you other than, you know what, reach out to the provost's office. Myself and the team will do everything we can. But again, this is not just the provost or the president. This is all of us working together. So I need you to be patient. But I will repeat the process again. I will send out another email again. I will meet with the division again. I will meet with the chairs again, because for those of you who bring that attention to me during the Senate, I met with those individuals and those prospective department numerous of times. So I don't know what else to do, but I'm certainly open to what Dr. Barklund said earlier. If there's any different way to do this, I'm open to that. The other thing I want to emphasize is that we have selected the task force. All of the departments have a scheduling committee, thank you, a scheduling committee. We met with the scheduling committee. We have a process that we're trying to build so that we could have it going forward. Jason is part of that, Andy Annecy is part of that. So I'm going to tell you, this is not an easy formula because we're talking about decades and decades of inefficiency in terms of how we offer courses. So you gotta work with us, you gotta work with me, I will work with you. It's all about the students, but we gotta have a process. We can't just do things and do business as usual. We're not gonna be able to survive as a college. And I just don't know what else to do other than I need your help, we need your help to make this a better institution.
Jackie, and then Phil, and then Kim.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me, I like to write notes, and I get really awkward when I ask questions in group like this, especially now you're all looking at me, so just bear with me. I'm just going to read my notes. All right. So just to piggyback a little bit off the conversation about general studies, I advise many general studies students. They tend to express a broad interest in liberal arts and transfer. In my experience, I would assume that if general studies were to cease to exist, the majority of those students would prefer a more specialized liberal arts degree. This is more just a statement, but that's actually very encouraging to me because traditionally liberal arts degrees are where tools such as emotional intelligence and other lifelong learning tools are taught and held. So just to reiterate a question that was asked, and I'm still a little unclear on your answer, what is your vision for students who are interested in SUNY, general education, and liberal arts? And also, if it is industry partnerships exclusively, are faculty responsible to make those partnerships? And when do you advise they do that?
So, great question. As far as, my vision for general studies, like you had suggested, I would love for us to be able to direct people into maybe more specialized areas of liberal arts that enable them to have more competitive opportunities when they graduate. I would hate for us to continue to invest in students taking general studies only to find out that, once the federal government says, we're not going to give financial aid to that because it's not of value, all those people who have general studies degrees are going to be left hanging and saying, well, what happened? And they're going to be devalued, to that point. And, I think that would be the worst thing in the world, which is why, I'm no expert in, our demographics or how many students are interested in different things or how many are willing to go into a more liberalized or more specialized liberal arts program. But I would strongly encourage people to do that rather than a general studies program.
Go ahead.
Could that even be a possibility to strategically grow our liberal arts programs?
So again, I'm open to anything that will grow our programs. I think there's greater value, candidly, in a specialized liberal arts than a general studies. And I agree, maybe, there's more opportunity to do transfer with four-year articulation agreements. But if, for example, we have to develop more articulation agreements for people who are getting an associate's degree in English, I'm all for it. I know every college, every four-year college around here that we have an articulation agreement with, they want more articulation agreements with us because they're also hurting for enrollment. And if they can get people to transfer from us, great. It's part of, some of the work that Eric is doing with Buff State and defining an Aspen program whereby we're trying to figure out how best to maximize the transfer of students from SUNY Erie to Buff State. And right now we have about 500 that transfer. That's a pretty decent number. But candidly, it could probably be twice that. We just got to figure out how to work with Buff State and position ourselves for that type of success. And then once we have that success, I really want to promote it. The fact that students who transfer from SUNY Erie and go to Buff State have a greater likelihood of graduating from Buff State than those who start at Buff State, that's an impressive fact. So, we need to promote stuff like this to say, this is why you want to start here. It's going to give you the opportunity to spread your wings a little bit, hopefully grow your emotional intelligence. But I think there's also a component to that of anybody who does transfer, they're committed. They're a section of our population of students that really want it. And, I think that's a differentiator between, people who transfer and are willing to stick it out and go for a 4-year degree, and those who might just say, hey, I didn't know what I was doing. I went to Buff State, So there could be a lot of reasons for it, but hey, I'm willing to promote the positives of it.
Phil.
Hi. I'm emotional, but all right, of my 505 college credits, 137 came from the school.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
All right. I said of my 505 college credits, 137 came from here. Okay, so this is really upsetting. So I guess my question is, I've watched all of our courses be dismissed at South, and the students are asking me, what do I do? What's our plan to bring the courses back?
So again, when you say they're being dismissed at South,
Yeah,
they
so
should be enrolling in courses at North and City.
Yeah, but they don't want to go to North.
But unfortunately, again, I would love to have 12 campuses. It's not affordable. We can keep saying, but they're here. The problem is there aren't enough students in the South to be able to sustain that size footprint.
And
That's the
You
problem.
have data for this? Because a lot of our courses had 12, 15 students canceled. Well, you can run one during the day. Or you can
No,
run
part of
one
the
in
data that I'm referring to isn't just, whether or not students are taking, 12 students are taking a class. It's whether or not we've got 24 taking a class at North and or City, and we can do it more efficiently. Part of our challenge is, unfortunately, the cost of being able to sustain duplicate courses delivered at multiple sites. It just doesn't financially close.
All right. I mean, didn't we try to send everyone here, and then we realized we didn't have enough classrooms?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Didn't we send a lot of students, we said we're going to teach these courses at North, and then all of a sudden you realize, well, wait a minute, there's not enough rooms for it. I mean, what was the plan?
I am.
Okay, so let me be clear, right? So the program that were deactivated, the teaching of those students were at South. We did a schedule for those students. There were over 500 students that need to be taught out. We offer the courses appropriately. In the event that we miss those students for whatever reason, we met with the department chairs and the faculty and worked through that, right? It wasn't a perfect science, but we did. And I'm going to tell you, we have about 20 students who, after the letter was sent out to students when they have complaints about their schedule and they couldn't do a schedule, we have about 20 students who sent an email to the president and to the provost's office. We worked through that. There were 4 students that we were not able to accommodate because they had a gap. So what I would recommend is that if we have students, they're having difficulty making their schedule, I could work with those students, our team could work with those students to make that. But those students that were part of that teach out, we made sure that those students had courses at South because we have to do that. So if we missed it for whatever reason, please let me know. We'll be able to fix that.
Okay,
Thank you. Kim?
My fault.
Hello. Could you speak to student support services and also retention and recruitment? Recognizing that those numbers are low, what are the plans or what do you envision in terms of improving those as we go forward? And also, I do work at South Campus as well, so I have concerns about South Campus and those positions. What does that crossover piece look like that's spoken to an RPK? And what do you envision for a counseling unit? Because I don't think that was mentioned in the RPK study at all.
Excuse me. Down the wrong pipe. So, with respect to recruitment and retention, kind of wish you had asked the question when Eric was here, because he's kind of developed into our guru. But, I'll tell you, from my perspective, retention is more important than recruitment in that we're losing probably 70% of our students in the first 15 credit hours. Think about that. You know what kind of pipeline we have to maintain in order to keep backfilling? And oftentimes, when we lose those students, they're not coming back. They had a bad experience, or they failed the course, or they didn't get an experience that was commensurate with their expectation, whatever it might be. But to that point, it's all the more critical that we do guided pathways. We do anything and everything we can to figure out how to make sure that we're contextualizing English classes to what they're really interested in. We're giving them an opportunity to take a class in the major that they want without a bunch of prerequisites. You know, we're letting them get their toe in the water. And, you know, I'm not going to stand here and say I have an answer. You know, there's things that we're going to have to try. You know, retention has been a challenge and is a challenge at every college throughout the United States. And I'll tell you, you know, I'm terrifically interested in trying to catch anybody who is participating in like the Excelsior Scholarship at UB or Buff State who aren't successful and saying, look, why don't we figure out how to work you back through Suny, Erie, and when you're ready, you can transfer back to Buff State. That's part of our Aspen program activity. Because again, we recognize that not everybody is ready for college at the same time, and their expectations are different and their needs are different. The number of students that we have who are first generation or who have to work, significant. But, you know, all that to say, you know, there's no one answer, unfortunately. You know, I'd love to say I've got the silver bullet. But what I'm really trying to do more than anything is try to get all of us to be developing relationships with businesses and industry partners, primarily because in the future, they're the ones who are going to ultimately be paying for the education of their employees. I'm sure you've all read the same articles I've read. For whatever reason, there's now a trend where people who are graduating from high school don't think that they should have to go into debt. They think that, hey, if somebody wants to hire me, they should pay me to go to school and train me to do what I need to do. And unfortunately for businesses, they're realizing that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to spend money. And by investing in the education of their employees, they're realizing, hey, we're developing loyalty. You know, people like the fact that companies invest in them. And by investing in them, it's showing that they have a future in that company, right? So, you know, I mention that because it's highly likely that, again, with night classes, with non-traditional students, we're going to continue to have to focus on the fact that people aren't going to be taking full loads. They're going to take 1 or 2 courses per semester tops, you know, a growing number of them. And we have to figure out how best to accommodate that because they've got to work. They've got to earn income. They've got families, especially recognizing they're 25 to 34.
Dr. Baldwin?
Hang on. Who is that? You're out of order?
Oh, it's Phil. I'm sorry. I do have some of Eric's data if you wanted to.
Thank you.
It's Phil.
Okay, sorry.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Kelly. I do have some of Eric's data if you wanted me to share.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of recruitment and enrollment, and I do apologize, Colin, for being out of order, the pipeline is way ahead of where it was during the pandemic. It's almost back to pre-pandemic levels, and registrations for the fall term are up by 12% versus a year ago. So, you know, we've been pacing at a minimum about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of where we were a year ago on applications, admitted students. So the interest, I guess my point is, the interest in SUNY Erie is there. Students want to attend SUNY
additionally,
Erie. Yeah, so we need to make sure they get registered and that we retain them.
Yeah, and your point about...
Phil, to follow up, is there a plan for that, for those students in the pipeline, to get them registered for the fall?
So my understanding is Eric is working with faculty to ensure that they have the names and the contact information so that they're reaching out directly for people who have expressed interest in their programs. And frankly, that's what we have to do. You know, we have to be very proactive in taking ownership of getting people registered into our programs. And if there's a person or, you know, a faculty member who isn't comfortable, you know, make sure you identify or work with Phil or somebody in Eric's shop to know who you can go to, the one go-to person who's going to be able to get this person registered. The worst thing we can do is pass students around to people who don't know what they're doing. I get emails every week about students getting passed from one professor to the next, or a professor sending me a note, copying me and saying, why did you send this person to me to get registered? They're not even interested in my program. I mean, we got to take ownership for anybody and everybody that comes across our desk. And we really got to figure out how to provide great customer service, because that's the differentiator. If somebody feels like somebody's going the extra mile to make sure that they get registered, they're going to bend over backwards to try to figure out how to get here. So,
thank you. Amy? there's one more question after that. We're going to get through, and we're going to get them off the hook and do a few things of business.
I just wanted to speak to general studies, working very closely with the competitive health science programs. Every health science program that is competitive admits students into general studies directly first, and if they don't meet the prerequisite requirements, they continue in general studies to do that. My concern is there a plan if general studies is going to move in other ways or shapes or forms? What's going to happen? Because we have hundreds upon hundreds of applicants in those areas. It's a very competitive area, very competitive field of study within the health sciences. As a community college, we need to be supporting those. So how are we going to assist those students, A, to get financial aid if that's an issue, and B, to have a place to go to take the classes with us to get into those programs?
So, great question. And I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers because, again, I don't know what's going to happen with general studies. However, I do think that if we can direct people who are interested in health sciences into other programs like medical assisting, phlebotomy, whatever, to gain more experience with hands-on, interaction with patients, it's probably also valuable.
Unfortunately, that program also admits into general studies first. So it really is
But
almost
again,
all of
when
them.
you say general studies first, it doesn't preclude us from saying, okay, let's define a new program that's pre-health sciences or pre-health nursing or whatever we want to do.
We've talked about that in the past. Unfortunately, that concept hasn't really gone anywhere. So, I'm happy to hear that because I think it's something that's essential. But again, it has to be demonstrated to be the same thing, an area where someone could go into the workforce with that. How do we prove that someone with a pre-health degree is going to be able to get a job with that? So I think, we're not going to find answers today necessarily, but I just wanted to put it out there because there are some concerns.
It's a great question. I think it's a great answer. And I think, frankly, in the current environment, anybody who's got health care in their graduation title can get a job. I mean, right now, every nursing home, every hospital, everyone is dying on the vine for people. And frankly, shame on us for not growing our nursing program faster. I don't know if you all saw, but in mid-April, registerednurses.org ranked Suny Erie City Campus Nursing RN program as the second best in the state behind University of Buffalo. That's unbelievable. That's wildly successful.
All right, Dr. Balkin, thank you very much for all of your answers and taking all the questions that everybody has had about the various topics that we covered today.
Let me just say one thing. I truly have an open door policy. I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts and ideas. And, I don't want anybody to be stewing about things for weeks. I may say something stupid. I'm not perfect. Call me on it right away. Because, again, you're not getting paid to worry about something stupid I said 24/7, right? I mean, the point here is we've got to do this together. We're going to either sink or swim together. And, there might be hostility and you might be frustrated. I appreciate that. I understand it. I understand how much you've invested of your lives into this college. And I greatly appreciate it. But at the end of the day, I'm also in this novel position where I got to say, how do we keep this viable for future generations? And that's what weighs on me. Every night I go home and I think, how do we balance this? We can't not everybody's going to be happy with anything we do. But at the end of the day, my focus has always got to be the long game. How do we sustain Suny Erie? Because Suny Erie is the second largest college in Western New York, and it's critical to the success and the economic growth of Western New York. Make no mistake. You guys are having an amazing impact, but you're only going to have an impact if we're here. So that's the thing that keeps me awake at night. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, So we have 10 minutes of business, and I'm going to be a teacher. I did not dismiss you. All right. We had really important conversations. I wanted to make sure everybody had an opportunity to ask the questions they needed to ask, but we do need to get to the Senate business. So we don't have to have an emergency meeting in July and make you come in for that. All right. So quick up on the docket. We have administrative liaison senators for are up for election. It's a 3-year term. There is a list of non-voting liaisons for different departments throughout the college. So far, we have nominations for Pat Ryan and Joe Lundin. Do you accept your nomination? Pat?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Anyone who is a non-voting liaison in the room, would you like to self-nominate as to become a voting senator?
Can you make this work?
Sure.
Robin Philippone?
All right, Robin Philippone. Any others? We got one more spot. You get to hang out with us every month and vote.
I'm not sure if
I'll
I'm
self-nominate.
where I fall in this because Mike emailed me.
Sorry, you're out. It's for AAECC. I'm sorry, I should have probably clarified that. The non-voting liaison list, hang on a second, is I emailed all the non-voting liaisons. They are appointed by the provost's office. People with asterisks next to their names are eligible and also have to be in the room. I'm sorry, Jason, you're not on the list. All right, so I'm going to say 3 people self-nominate for 4 spots. You got them. All right. There's no need for an election. Congratulations. Next we need, there were 5, now hopefully we're down to 3 spots. There were 5 spots where people did not run for an election from teaching and faculty departments. So we were able to find people that could fill those spots temporarily as at-large appointments for 1 year starting today until the May of 23. 2 of those are Lisa Wiley Maslow. She'll be covering LAS North. And then Kim Crowell-Munn will be filling in for the college-wide electronic technicians for 1 year until time for re-election again next year. So are there any objections? Then I'm going to say that these are approved by consent of the College Senate. Congratulations, and thank you for helping us out. Those at home, there are 3 spots that we need, that we can fill. Let me know, and we can confirm you in September if you wish to be at-large senator serving from September to May of 23. Kathy Colesto, you're up. I'm pulling up the doc. Give me a sec.
Colleen, did I see 2 little letters in front of your name?
There are letters in front of my name.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. So last month we voted to have a task force discuss the existing planning and assessment policy. We have membership of Dr. Sabrina Kane, Andy Heisey, David Sylvia, Jennifer Noble, Adrian Rannick, Patty Lucido, Amy Preston Faust, Hiddine Stokes, and Arta Plana. We had very robust conversations, really good conversations, actually. And within about, I'd say the first half an hour, we struck the entire policy and made 3 bullet points that we're proposing to be the policy going forward. So the policy as it existed was a mixture of policy, plan, and procedure. It also had a very punitive language attached to it, which does not really promote assessment. It does not promote congeniality, is that the right word? Collegiality. And it really just, it doesn't do in the job. So the proposed policy states, SUNY Erie Community College will maintain planning and assessment procedures that are designed to comply with State University of New York's policy and guidance on assessment, Middle States Commission on Higher Education standards for accreditation and requirements of affiliation, and other accrediting bodies as required, And then our justification for changes is that the policy is reduced to remain evergreen through simplified language linking to major accreditors. A more thorough plan and procedure will supplement this policy. The names I mentioned in the beginning are continuing to meet throughout the summer as we develop the institutional effectiveness assessment plan and procedure manual that will be appended to this, but we are looking for approval of this to send to the Board of Trustees.
Great, thank you, Kathy. So as you can see, I highlighted the 3 bullet points. I kind of scrolled a little bit. This document was 7 pages long, and it was reduced to these 3 bullet points. It's evergreen. It's not controversial. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but it's not punitive. So Kathy, would you like to make a motion to approve this policy?
Yes, I do just want to make a statement that this is part of our entire response to Middle States. So if there are anything that we need to do to make this go forward, we're very eager to do so. So I make a motion.
Great. Second? Tom Webb, thank you. All right, discussion. Questions? Objections? I'm going to say it passes by consent. And this was a big one. This is going to help us with Middle States, as Kathy mentioned, staying in compliance. We kind of found out we needed to do this. If you recall, in May, we put the task force together, and they worked during the hardest part of the academic year, as far as I'm concerned. It's the end of the spring semester, it's graduation, it's the beginning of summer session, and all those things, and they found time to come together and help get this together. So thank you. It's going to the Board of Trustees Policy Committee tomorrow morning at 8:30. Kathy, do you have a question?
I don't have a question. I just want to thank the members of the committee. I want to thank both unions for having people on board, and for Arda because she gave a different kind of thought process to what this should be. So it was, and they met literally the last week of classes twice for 2 hours. So thank you, everybody.
Fantastic. One last thing. We are going to be pulling for it. It's on the site. Hang on. There's going to be a proposed bylaw change, very standard. We've already done it twice. We did it with CWCC, which is our college-wide curriculum committee, and we also did it with general studies. We're looking to move academic standards committee also under the College Senate. We're not voting on this today. We're throwing it out there at everybody today. Take a look at it. We're going to work on it over the summer if there's any issues with it, and then it'll be up for a vote in September. What it does is it puts the Academic Standards Committee underneath the Senate, just like the other 2 academic committees of the college. And it spells out the process. And that's another thing that we need for Middle States. Like, what is the process for academic policy, right? Academic policy is the purview of the faculty. The faculty are the experts in their field. So faculty write the policy, we put it together here, and then it goes to the board, and that is the procedure. And so what this is going to do, it's going to line it up correctly and keep us in line and make it official. We've been doing it exactly like this for years. It's just not written down anywhere, which is one of the things that we're guilty of for many things, right? So it's written down now. There's the academic policy portion and then the standards portion. All right, so the standards portion is, so there's membership in section 3, and that is for academic policy. And then if you scroll down, you'll see subcommittees. All right, there will be a standing subcommittee of for student academic standing, which is probation, et cetera, right? Which is a lot of the things that we have done in this room. And so there is a membership for that subcommittee as well. So as you're looking through, please read the full document. Come back with any questions, email me. Maybe we'll throw an FCAS together over the summer for discussion, and then we're gonna go for it in September. Any questions? I just want to thank Amy Yoder and Dan Frontera were on the agenda. They're not, sorry guys, Dan already left. Bye, Dan. And it is 82 degrees outside. Pat Ryan is here with Bright Space Pilot. I just want to also thank Pat and his team. I am probably one of the worst offenders. I call them up because I did something stupid, like I erased my whole entire grade book. Or my grade book was weighted, and I actually asked Pat earlier, it's at 199.9999% weighted. It's supposed to be adding up to 100. I am a math person, I know that, right? So they are really working well with our faculty, getting this up and going. Suny Erie is one of the few community colleges across the state that is actually still in the pilot. A lot of them were like, forget it, this is terrible and this is garbage and we're pulling out, right? Our team is doing it with an amazing leadership that's getting us through it. But I think that it is important to know that many other community colleges are suffering, it's difficult, and they've pulled out completely, but not us. Because it's a Suny thing. Suny is moving from Blackboard to Brightspace. By the end of the fall semester, period, end of story. It's not us, it's Suny. It's 82 degrees outside, it's a Tuesday, have a great day. Thank you, see you in September.